Oasis. I really loved this. I think that there is something so fantastic and fun about learning the inner workings of a sport, but especially a sport in something that means so much to entire, culture of people, an entire country, like with Mexican wrestling. And I think that like lucha libres, they like I can't ever truly understand what they mean and how impactful they are because I'm not a part of that culture and I didn't grow up with it. I can learn about it, which is what I think these movies are so much fun. But I won't, like I said, I think that something will always be lost in translation because I truly do not belong to that culture. And there's only so much that you can learn, and that will only get you so far in really truly understanding something. But I do think that the point of there's something magical about being there in person. I think this is true of any sport, but especially a sport that is so performative and can feel so close and so much closer, not for all of the seats obviously, but I feel like with wrestling a lot of the time you can feel so much closer than you can with like basketball or with football or with baseball, because those sports are played on such a large field, they have such a large area. Even the ones that aren't huge, like a basketball court isn't giant, but it's still a pretty decent sized space. So I feel like, but with wrestling, because the ring is so small, that you end up feeling so much closer, and I feel like the performative factors of the wrestlers, especially because they're characters and they're characters that these wrestlers, these professionals put time and effort and a lot of time, years into, that when you're live and in person, I think there's always something magical about watching live sports. But I wouldn't know personally, but I can see how that with something so performative like wrestling, that magic is just so much higher. And the energy that you feed off of from the crowd, not only as an audience member being a part of the crowd, but also I would imagine being a performer themselves, like the energy that gets created in a space like that, it has to be through the roof. And I think that this is just such a great way to highlight those things.
Um, I really liked Oasis. I thought it was wholesome. You know, somebody who's never really been into wrestling for real, this made a hell of a pitch, yo. It made it seem cool, like something that's like more like something that's different from like WWE. That's my only, reference point for wrestling. Um, this felt like something different. This felt like, oh, this is a community thing, the same as like football and like basketball or whatever, like a sport. And it's like good for people, good for exercise, good for the community to have as like a thing, which is different, I think, than WWE. So like how he was talking about like, oh, how like it's good for the kids to like have this as like a thing so they don't turn to not as to unhealthy pastimes. So I thought it was dope, yo. And it gave me a new perspective on the sport of wrestling. So also the cinematography was fire. Great job.
Lucha libre. You have people who are kind of on both ends of the spectrum. There are people who feel like all wrestling is fake and stuff like that. I am not one of those people. I've gone to a lucha libre match, and unless you've been to a match and you're in the room and you feel that energy and you see that showmanship and the skill that the wrestlers have, you don't know what it's like. And you also don't know what you're missing, too. This film was able to capture that, and it was fantastic. I loved listening to the wrestlers' VO. I thought it was awesome, and it gave the audience his perspective on what it's like for him and how difficult this sport is, because it is difficult. I just think that the cinematography was fabulous. The edit was great too. They knew how to edit this to keep a pace and to keep you engaged, and the subject matter was interesting and fun, and yeah, that energy. This film had the same kind of energy that you find at a match, which that's one of the best compliments that I can give you.
Oasis brings us this connection to culture, to passion, to finding this sense of healing and resilience. You get to follow this team of wrestlers who are, getting on the stage and having this experience. So we kind of get to see the way that they have this spiritual connection almost to being inside the ring. You get to hear it from the wrestlers themselves when they get to say things like, I get a thrill by the smell of a locker room. And you're like, on first glance, you're like, oh, that's a very unique perspective, but also at the same time, I get to think about how I love to read, for instance, and that smell of a book. Like, you get that sensory experience when you're really passionate about something that you love. And so we get to hear these different, unique qualities that these characters, these people, carry for something that is not only like a passionate hobby and sport for them, but something that connects to their overall culture themselves. We get to see a direct niche approach to something that a large population can relate to. There's a huge wrestler appreciation culture out there for sure.